Hey guys, welcome to session number 25 of the Trailer Music Composers Podcast. Hello. One man with one microphone who as a teenager found making a phone call incredibly scary. Welcome to the Trailer Music Composers Podcast. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Trailer Music Composers Podcast. In today's episode, I wanted to cover two of the biggest problems faced by not just trailer music composers, but any kind of composer of any kind of music. And those two problems are this. The first one is knowing how to translate the ideas that are floating around your head, how to translate those into not just good sounds, but sounds that people can relate to, sounds that people want to listen to, and sounds that people want to buy, music that is palatable and sellable. Now the other thing is, then how do you get that music out there? Now this, I'm going to cast my mind back many moons to when I first started out as a composer. And, back then, this was 2005, back then I wasn't planning on being a trailer music composer. I wanted to be, the next Danny Elfman, or, as close to that as I could possibly get, because Danny Elfman is an absolute legend. Anyway, so, the problems I faced were this. How do I get better as a composer, and how do I then get my music heard? And I was trying to approach those things all at the same time. So obviously, this is the thing as a composer. It's not just like you do a course that's like, this will make you a good composer. There's so many aspects to being a better composer. For instance, with the music production side out of the way, your grasp of theory when it comes to harmony, when it comes to melody, when it comes to rhythm, when it comes to orchestration, all of these things and how they all come together. And then you've got mixing, then you've got recording, then you've got mastering, you've got this whole, as a composer, it's kind of like you have to sit there with like a whole table of different hats and be the master of all of them. And I found that, I don't know about you, but I found that incredibly daunting. But I persevered and I endeavoured to be better. So I, sat down and did all the research I could, if there were, back then, I can't think of any courses that were available that weren't astronomically expensive or that just weren't quite what I wanted, i.e. they were more sort of classical music based or sort of really beats heavy stuff, which, both of those things I love, but I wanted kind of like the be all and end all of courses. So I persevered, as I've already said, which was great fun. But then what happens is this: you start to produce this music, and then it's like, oh great, I've just got this music sat on my hard drive. So what am I going to do with it now? And there lies the next problem. The problem that is, what do you then do with your music? And then we open up another cupboard of a ton of different hats, not just salesman, but, marketing, and these days, social media manager. You've got all these roles that you have to fulfill as a composer now, which is fine, but it's a lot of work. And back then, 2005, I struggled with a lot of this stuff. I didn't know where to find, how do I get my music out there? Okay, great, I'll get a MySpace page. That was pretty much what I did, and then just sat there twiddling my thumbs. I think I did start a blog, which, admittedly, I wish I'd persevered with, because it would be huge right now. But, we had a MySpace page, and then you just sit there twiddling your thumbs, being like, oh, no one's listened to it today, and no one's No one's commented, which admittedly is still the sad state of affairs it is today for me on most social media platforms. Ignore them, don't go into vanity metrics, Rich, someone's got to like my post. Anyway, my sad admission aside, those are the two. I'm sorry guys, I'm walking on that sea of nachos again, aren't I? Let me just, I don't know why, but I always seem to go, I do these podcasts in the woods, and there's a path, and for some reason it's almost like I'm actually being sidetracked by my thoughts into the sea of nachos, which is just dry leaves for those of you salivating at the mouth. So I did sidetrack, didn't I? Here we go, back on the normal path. And that was the problem I faced. How do I get better as a composer? How do I get my music out there? And it just felt like I was sending tentacles everywhere, trying to desperately find, back then, 2005, finding stuff on the internet was pretty tough. Every website you went onto looked absolutely dodgy. And MySpace seemed to be the thing, and finding out about becoming a better composer was a case of going to the library and reading a book. Not the same wonder it is today with YouTube and all these course platforms, etc., etc. And that is what has been on my mind this whole time I've been doing these courses. This whole time I've been sort of making sure I give back to the composer community, because do you know what, like when I was first starting out, I found it so scary and so daunting, and there are a couple of very kind composers who responded to my emails with the classic advice, which I found myself giving as well. Keep at it, man, you're doing well, persevere. When you're in that situation and someone replies to that, so I apologise to any of you who I have sent that email to. When you hear that and you're at the start of your career, you're like, oh, bog off. Thank you, obviously. But at the same time, you're like, oh, man, where's this fast track? Where's this sure shot? Anyway, so I apologise for those of you. So I understand how frustrating it is. I really do. And that's where my heart is when I'm doing these courses. And that's where it is when I'm doing this podcast. I'm essentially looking back at myself with some very sentimental trailer music playing, looking back to myself going, come on, Richie, you can do this, little guy, keep working hard. And actually, look, I've got all these lovely nuggets of information for you, little clues, which I'm hopefully passing back on to you, which is, it's my service to the industry. And that is where my head has been for the last, I don't know, it's been a couple of years now, so probably approaching 3 years now since I started doing courses and things. And I'm absolutely loving it. I'm absolutely loving helping you guys. And the feedback I'm getting from this podcast, from my YouTube videos, from my trailer music school has been phenomenal. And I just absolutely love helping you guys. And that is where this wonderful thing happened. So, those of you who don't know, I am a writer for Elephant Music with Vikram Goody, and I also write for Mammoth Audio, which is also Vikram Goody's baby, one of his many babies, one of his many businesses, and I have had great success with both of those companies. And obviously I was one of the first writers on board with Elephant when it was launched, because I've known Vic before he launched Elephant. We started our careers at the same time, as those die-hard fans of you would know. And me and Vic got to talking. This has been on the conversation for years now. We've been talking about this since I started the course. I started this course, and Vic was like, dude, I want to start a course. So we started spitballing about it, combining his knowledge of the business with my knowledge of the practical elements of the composition and the production. And it never really came to anything. We talked about it, and we were like, yeah, cool, let's do this. And nothing really happened with it until, when was it, last year? 18 months ago, perhaps? Not last year, what was it? 2018. Until 2018, when I was like, look, Vic, I've got all these students who do my course. Is there any chance we could collaborate and run a competition for my students where the best tracks get published on an Elephant Music album? And he was like, Yes, that's, as any of you who know Vic would say, huge. So we did that. We ran a competition, and I can't remember how many of them got there. So it was a 21-track album. So there's quite a lot of students on there. It was about 15 students. Some of them did multiple tracks because they really impressed us. And it got published, and a couple of them have got placements. Trailer placements off the back of this competition, so they're now like published trailer composers, and that was such a learning curve for me. But also, it was both Vic and I were like, "This is fantastic." You know, it was just great to be able to give back to the composer community, and we, started talking about this. We were like, "Hang on, this is really fun. This is really cool. Why don't we join forces properly? Why don't we create a school where we can do exactly what we did in that instance?" And what we did there was we set a brief as per industry standards. So if you're doing an album for any music publisher, you would get a brief. If you were doing a pitch for any trailer or ad or whatever, you would get a brief. Some of them are bare bones, some of them are hugely detailed. Some of the advert briefs you get are just like, I'm not sure I need to know the colour of the paint on the walls at the time, but thank you for the detail. So we set a brief. We send it to the students, but we send the students a course that teaches them how to do music in the style of the brief. Because this is what we found with that release. We did this release, it was called Onyx. It was dark sound design. And we found that a lot of students and other aspiring composers didn't know how to do dark sound design, because whenever people think about trailer music, they think it's just epic music. So I got a ton of tracks that were good, but just were off brief. We're like, okay, this is actually an orchestral track. It's a great orchestral track, but it's not dark sound design. So a huge part of that process was actually me kind of educating, and Vic educating those people on how to approach writing like that, which was a huge learning curve for them and for us. So we decided, yes, let's do this school where we set a brief. We then produce a course so they understand how to respond to that brief, and then they submit to us and we feed back on their tracks. And then those of the best tracks we then publish. And what I mean by that is we send them out to, I would say it is ours now, but obviously it's mostly Vic's network of global contacts in the film, the trailer, the game, the TV, you name it, that world. So essentially, we will be publishing the best tracks. And that is the beautiful premise of our school that we have started called Protege. I'm absolutely over the moon about this project. It's huge, because I'm looking back to myself 15 years ago, and I'm thinking, if I could give this to me then, I would have absolutely jumped out of my pants, not in a sexual way, but in a very excited, cartoony, super fast way. Absolutely jumped out of my pants, where they jump out of the stool and all that's left is their socks, their shoes and their trousers and their pants, because they've rocketed up to the moon. I would have absolutely jumped at this course. It's not only are you getting absolutely niche education, you are also getting guidance from, excuse me, I didn't bring my own horn, but I'm going to blow it, two multi-award-winning composer and producer duo. It's absolutely huge. I mean, when do you get that? And then, if you impress them, the judges at that time, that I say judges, all of a sudden I'm thinking the X Factor, me and Vic, if the track shows us that you've got merit, then we will then publish it in our company as a published track, which then gets pitched for trailers, for films, for TV, for games, you name it. And that absolutely blows my mind. I mean, I still think to myself, hey, I want to do this course. Obviously, I am doing it because I'm producing a large part of the video content. And this is the beautiful thing. We are educating and also providing that network of opportunities. Which, there was a dramatic pause there. I mean, it's just huge. So, to give you some finer details, I mean, this, just in case you haven't realised it, it's kind of a sales pitch, but it's also explaining what's happening, because I'm noticing a few people are coming to my trailer music school being like, hey, can I get on to Elephant this way? And actually, I'm removing that from the trailer music school and I'm putting it into Protege. And that's what me and Vic are doing. We're saying, hey, if you guys want to learn from us and be distributed and published with us, then come to Protege, because that's where it's going to be. And what will happen is this. It's a whole year-long course. It's not like a traditional online course where it's like, do it whenever you want, as fast as you want, here's 10 hours of video. There are 30 weeks of courses spread out over a year in 5-week terms. So first term is 5 weeks, second term is 5 weeks, third term is 5 weeks, etc. Partly because I want to be around as a dad during my kids' school holidays, and also because I think everyone needs a break. 30 solid weeks of work would be crazy. So that's the way it's structured. And within those 5 weeks, each week has a brief, has a course, has a workbook, has feedback from myself, Vic, and our team of producers, and also a weekly call with hot seats where me and Vic will talk through the strongest tracks or the tracks that have jumped out to us for one reason or another, and speak to you guys as composers. There are limited places on this course. There are only 100 places for this year-long course. And the beauty, this is where it gets, I'm actually jumping up and down now, guys. If I was on the Nacho wood floor, you would hear it. Maybe I should move over there. The beauty of it is this, right? Say in week 1, this is why it excites. So say in week 1, right, we give you the brief, you do the course, you send us a track, and it blows our minds. Vic will send it out. Boom, send it out to his contacts. So you could potentially have your track placed within the first term, because sometimes the turnaround is that quick. And then, hey, amazing, you're a jobbing composer. I mean, I'm very, very excited by this, and I cannot wait for it to start. The course launches on the 7th of September. We have already opened the doors for like an early bird submission. So we have already sold quite a few places, and it's kind of blown our minds as to how many places have gone already, and we've barely done any marketing. Like, this is actually my first marketing, to you guys. And most of you probably already know about it anyway. But if you don't, this is just huge. So I will give you more details. I'll just say, if you want more details, you can head on over to protege.school. We've got one of those cool, quirky domains, because protege.com was gone, of course. Protege.school. Where you can find more details, but essentially it's 30 weeks of courses, so 30 whole courses, which, admittedly, if I was charging you for that course that I'm doing each week, it would be £300. 300 times 30. £9,000, 9,000, which obviously our course isn't that expensive, but it is an investment. And I really want to highlight that to you. It's an investment in yourself and your career. Because the beautiful thing of it is, with a lot of courses, I've done the courses too, guys. I know where you're coming from. A lot of the courses, you do the course and it's like, oh, okay, done. Now what do I do? I mean, I did a degree, 3 years of study, and you're like, yes, this is amazing. I know everything under the sun. And you leave and go, oh no, I don't know anything. And I especially don't know how to get paid to do this. And what we're doing at Protege is we're teaching you everything we know. Vic's running business videos, business courses within each of those 30 weeks as well. So he's teaching you everything he knows about the industry. I'm teaching you everything I know about my end of the industry, which is, sitting on your own in your room writing music because it's awesome and fun. And then we're also saying, hey, if you're good enough, maybe you can get paid. Here you go. And we're putting our money where our mouth is, because obviously our reputations are on stake. If the tracks you submit are rubbish and we send them off and they're rubbish, then we won't get any placements and it'll be rubbish. But it's not going to be like that. Because we both have a track record, Vic and I, of mentoring students who then go on to get placements. And that's the plan. So once you've done the year, hold on, Rich, what happens after I've done the year's course? Am I just going to be abandoned? I understand why you think that, but no. Obviously, we will be offering every student who signs up the chance to stay. They will stay, because it's going to be awesome, on our books as a composer. Because obviously the school is only one aspect. We are launching a publisher to go with this, who will be releasing music, much like Elephant does, much like Mammoth does, but on a larger scale. And that's the idea. We are training you up to be awesome so that you can then carry on being awesome for us and for yourselves. And that's just it's just so cool. I mean, it's so cool. And the thing that makes it extra specially awesome is that you sign up for the course, you then become part of the community. We have a membership site for those students who do sign up, where it's kind of like your own little private face group. I'm not drunk, honestly, I'm not. Own private Facebook group. But it's more than that. So you sign onto the website, much like my Trailer Music School is at the moment. You sign onto it, and those of you who have done the free Protege course, you sign onto it, you've got the course, you've got the activity feed, you've got forums, you've got groups. It's all very, very exciting. And then once you're signed on there and you've done the year-long course, you stay there as a graduate, so you still have the network, you still have access to me and Vic, you still have access to our producers, you still have access to the support, and it's just beautiful. Like, I look at it and I think, no, I didn't come up with this. No, me and Vic didn't do that. No, that's way too cool. But there's no other courses like this. Yes, there are high-end production courses. Yes, there are chances to get an internship with a company. Yes, you can send as many emails as you like to publishers to get placed. But, how many of you has that actually worked for when you haven't built up the relationship first? And that's the trick. So I once, on that, a little anecdote there. I once used to work for a company that used to deal with advertising music in London, and I went up to meet one of the supervisors there, and she said to me, "Hey Rich, how come you didn't just reach out to us sooner and say," funnily enough I went to university with her, but I didn't realise that until afterwards, how come you didn't just sort of contact us and see if we'd use you as a composer? And I said, if I'd had emailed you without building the contact, if I had emailed you cold and just said, "Hey, I'm a composer, listen to my reel, can I work with you?" would you have read the email, listened to it, and then got back to me? And she said, "No, on all accounts." And there we go. That is the catch-22. It's really hard to get work as a composer if you don't have the network. It's really hard to build the network if you don't have work as a composer. And that's the struggle I had for years and years and years. And I was lucky enough to actually get into a network through a friend, which I mentioned in the first episode. And that is what we're trying to essentially solve the problems for you composers. Where the first problem being, how do I become as good as this? How do I write like that? How do I produce music in this way? Tick, tick, tick. And then, now what do I do with it? How do I sell it? How do I get this placed on a trailer? How do I get this on a game? How do I get it? Oh, don't worry, we'll sort that out for you. that's just the beauty of it. I mean, obviously, we cannot guarantee anything. We're not saying if you sign up, you're going to get a placement, because that would be false. And, you still have to put the work in, and you still have to produce good work. So, at the end of it, if your tracks aren't great, sorry, you just have to keep working at it. But you still have the support network to help you get better. So I've noticed this in my trailer music school, where sometimes the composers send a track and it's not that great, or at least it could do with a lot of work, but then they work on it with another composer, giving them feedback, and then they resubmit it, and it's just banging, and it's awesome. And that's the beauty of it, and that's one of the reasons this has kind of sprung up to me, was the way the trailer music school has been working. Those of them who signed up for a year have been in it for the year. Those who signed up for a month dipped in for a bit and then dipped out. So I didn't get a chance to build a relationship with them. So they missed the opportunity to have the relationship with me. That sounds really terribly arrogant. You know what I mean? They weren't there for the long haul. Whereas those who signed up for a year for the long haul, who put the bigger investment on the table, they had skin in the game. So they put the work in. And you know what? They're going to reap the rewards. And that is the beauty of Protege. You're investing in yourselves, and we're going to invest in you. And that's, it just sounds so awesome. Sorry if I'm getting way too excited about this, but I've been waiting to do this podcast for weeks and weeks and weeks. I was just thinking, when's the right time to do it? I don't know when the right time to do it. The right time is now, and I'm going to send it out next week. So, like I said, if you want more information, you can go to protege.school for it. The other thing is, if you want to test out the school, we have a free week for you. So what we did was we just built a separate website, and we put one of our courses on there. And we thought, hey guys, what if you want to test it first? We give you a brief, we show you how to respond to it with some video courses, and then you upload it and get some feedback from us. Go to protegefreeweek.com/register. The URLs will be in the show notes, by the way, just in case you're scrabbling to grab a pen. But yeah, and the feedback from that has been huge. I mean, it's just been great. And that's the thing that's been really, really wonderful. Like, both Vic and I genuinely want to help as many composers as we can, without obviously spreading ourselves too thin, hence the limited numbers. We genuinely want to help you guys. And we genuinely want to share your successes and celebrations. Because the other thing is, having the community of composers is huge. It's so important. I have absolutely loved having my trailer music school community. They are absolute legends. And I'm so excited about the Protege community. It's going to be absolutely rocking. And especially once the placements start rolling in, because they will. I'm not guaranteeing any of them, but they will. It's just going to be absolutely massive. It'll be like, we'll have to do high five calls all the time. Don't quote me on that, obviously. Busy man, So yeah, if you want to get into training music or even production music, get your music on TV shows, whatever it is, seriously have a think about this. I mean, because I know I would. And like I said, this is kind of like a cathartic thing for me, to give back to my past self, who this is all I ever wanted, was guidance from people in the know, was courses to teach me very specific things, like how do you do that cool trailer music sound? How does he get that weird horror music sound that he does? All those questions. I mean, there's tons of them. There are literally tons of them. And then within each thing, so, what do they use to make that weird stuttery sound? I mean, that still runs through my head every time I hear a piece of music. How did they do that? And then on top of that, you have a chance to submit and get feedback. Every week, your track will get fed back upon. Guaranteed. Which is massive, because actually in the industry, you won't always get feedback. I'm not talking about if you're doing library music, because obviously they're producing an album. I'm talking about if you do a brief, you might not always get feedback. Sometimes you just send, especially in advertising, you send a track off and it just dies in the distance. And then on top of that, you get the opportunity for it to be sold and placed and licensed. I know I'm sounding like a broken record going over these points, but I like saying it out loud. I still think this is just absolutely mind-boggling. I cannot wait to get this started, because I think it's going to be massive. It's going to be massive, and it's going to be huge for those of you who decide to invest in yourselves and join us September 2020, the 7th of September 2020, Protege launches. And after that, there'll be no more students enrolling. It's going to be doors open and then they close, because obviously we're not going to accept people midway through the year. So you want to get your stuff together. I was going to say get your shirt together, but I try to keep this a profanity-free podcast for any families listening. For those of you who want to get your shirt together, you've got until September, but I would recommend booking your place now, because they're going fast, and a lot faster than I thought they would. Not to reveal my surprise, but as with any business venture, there's always a slight bit of hesitance about the launching, and it's been massive. We've had placements in tons of industry magazines and blogs and stuff, and it's just been great being featured and having that exposure, because I think so many composers would benefit from this. I mean, it's kind of like, actually, this is how I made a living as a composer. This is exactly how I made a living as a composer. I am literally giving you all of my knowledge. So Training Music School, you're getting a few of my courses, guys. Whereas Protege, I am just unloading. Not like that. Calm down. 30 courses. And the other thing is, it's not going to be the same 30 courses, because we want to keep it relevant. So the following year, it might be a different 30 courses. Hopefully not, because that's a lot of work. But we will keep it relevant, because at the end of the day, we're training you to produce the best work so that we can sell it. And if that means that next year we drop the cinematic hip-hop, which we probably won't, because that's pretty much evergreen, and we replace it with banging Japanese taiko drums, then that's what we do. Because we want to keep it relevant. Not that we're going to be following trends, but trends are important in the trailer music industry and advertising. Let's face it, it's all advertising, really, isn't it? The stuff that we're doing, game adverts, film adverts, TV adverts, promos, whatever it is. Our music sells something else, so it has to sound cool and amazing and sell the right mood, and that's what we're doing. Now, I'm very aware that I'm gonna have been blabbering on. I'm gonna reach myself going full circle in a minute, and not just on my walk, but also on the conversation with myself. To you guys, I'm aware you're listening. Thanks, podcast audience. You guys are absolute legends, by the way. I just feel I need to put this in here. You guys are absolute legends. The amount of feedback you guys have given me on this podcast has been huge, and it's been so wonderful to hear that these random rants and my random interviews have been helpful and insightful, and not just the rantings of a slightly crazy man. Although probably in those parts you're a little bit like, let's skip that bit. Thank you for listening, guys, because you guys are absolute legends. And just before you reach the press stop, because I'm like you, I don't really care about the very end of the podcast. This isn't the very end of the podcast. I was just adding a very, very small thank you to my podcast audience for being such legends. I want to return back to where I started. The two biggest problems for any composer. learning and mastering your craft, and getting your music out there. And, that last one has a caveat of and actually earning money from it, and that's the real trick, and I don't know whether Vic's going to be listening to this, but Vic is an absolute master salesman. I've worked with lots and lots of companies, and he really does excel at it. And that's what we want to break for you guys. We want to break those problems down. We want to give you the skills to master your craft, and then give you the channels to make a living from it. That's what we want. We want to be able to come out at the end of this and be like, you know what? We had 100 students join us, and 100 students are now doing this full time. Or, 100 students are now decided to keep this as their side hustle because it's sweet, and they still love their day job but just wanted to give it a try. Whatever story it is that you have going on in your life, whether you've decided this year is going to be the year that you go for it, we want you to succeed. We want to come away from this with 100 absolute success stories. And we are going to try our absolute darndest to make sure that happens. So, those of you who know me and know my rantings and ravings and know my courses will hopefully know how detailed I go when I go into my courses. I like to know that you have got the thing that I'm trying to teach. And I like to make sure that you have all the tools you can to use my knowledge as a springboard for your success. And the same goes for Vic. We want you guys to be as good as possible and to then go on to achieve what it is you want to achieve, whether it is get your first placement, whether it is earn a living from what you're doing, or whether it is just carry it on as a side hustle, whatever it is. We want to make sure that we give you every chance we can. So yes, how to solve those two problems. I really, really do think this protege school that we have started, Vic and I, is an absolute game changer. I'm not just saying that because we created it, but it is. Education, mentoring, opportunities, continued opportunities, professional development, all wrapped up in one course. It's just brilliant. Guys, thank you so much for listening. And I really do appreciate it because some of you are probably on here to be like, okay, Rich, I just want to hear you do some epic hits again. And thank you so much for listening. And I really do think you guys should check out protege.school and go check out our full course. Now, the thing is, if it's not for you, Protege, we also have a YouTube channel where we're going to be putting out YouTube tutorials, so we were going to be putting out free content. We also have another podcast called Composer Stories, which is interviews with composers who are actually composing for a living. Trailer music composers, library composers, game composers, you name it. Obviously, I'm one of them that's interviewed, which was fun. But yeah, that's hosted by Guy Jones. He's on the Protege team, a very talented composer, great singer. So we're also giving back more. We want to give back more. We want to give free content to you guys, like another podcast, like more YouTube content. And that's just going to keep going and keep growing because we want to help the composers community thrive. Right, yeah, anyway, you guys are absolute legends. Thanks for listening. And I hope you have a good day. Yeah, over and out. See ya.